Every story leaves behind a lesson, if only we are willing to listen. Our elders say, not every journey that begins with 2 feet ends with 2 footprints. This is the story of 2 young women who shared one dream, until life asked each of them to choose a different path. There was a time when everyone in town believed Romans and Sasha were sisters. If one was seen walking down the road, people automatically expected the other to be just a few steps behind. Our elders say, a friend who walks with you in the sunshine is common. The one who stays when the storm begins is the rare treasure. Back then, neither of them imagined a storm would ever come. From the time they were little girls, the 2 shared almost everything. Romans with voluminous, soft, natural black curls, while Sasha features cascading, golden honey blonde waves. They walked to school together, studied side by side, and spent countless afternoons beneath an old acacia tree, filling worn-out notebooks with sketches of beautiful homes they hoped to build one day. Children dream without fear. Perhaps that's why their dreams were so big. While other children argued over toys and sweets, Romans and Sasha argued over whose mansion would have the bigger living room. They would laugh until their stomachs hurt, only to agree that, in the end, they would build those mansions together anyway. People often smiled whenever they saw them. These 2, the neighbors would say with a chuckle. Even if one gets married, they'll probably build houses next door to each other. Life, however, has a strange sense of humor. Sometimes, the very people who promise never to leave your side are the same people life quietly leads in another direction. As the years passed, their dream grew with them. It followed them into university, where they both enrolled to study interior design. While many students chased good grades, Romans and Sasha chased something much bigger, a future with their names written on buildings that would outlive them. Our elders also remind us, when 2 people pull a cart together, the journey feels shorter. And for a long time, that was true. They became known for working as one. Their lecturers often joked that if one of them missed class, the other probably knew the missing answers anyway. Whether they were preparing presentations, sketching floor plans, or staying awake long after midnight to finish assignments, they were almost never apart. It was during their first semester that another student quietly began paying attention to Romans. His name was Jay. He was intelligent, ambitious, and carried himself with the confidence of a man who believed every closed door could eventually be opened. After weeks of gathering courage, he finally approached her. "I've liked you for a while," he admitted, rubbing the back of his neck with a nervous smile. "Would you give me a chance?" Romans looked at him kindly, before gently shaking her head. "I'm sorry, Jay. You're a good man, but my heart doesn't feel the same." Disappointment crossed his face, but he accepted her answer with grace. After all, the heart is like rain. No one can command where it should fall. Only one of them knew that this simple conversation, so ordinary, so respectful, would quietly become the first thread in a story that none of them could stop once it began. Roman's rejection was gentle, but pride doesn't always heal as quietly as the heart. Jay smiled, accepted her decision, and walked away. Yet deep inside, he couldn't understand why she had refused him. Our elders say a wound covered by clothes is still a wound. Some heal with time, others wait for the right moment to speak. Not long after, Jay noticed something he hadn't seen before: Sasha.
She was kind, thoughtful, and unlike Romans, she welcomed his attention. What began as simple conversations soon became deliberate visits, thoughtful gestures, and quiet acts of affection. Jay wasn't chasing love anymore. He was replacing rejection. Sasha, on the other hand, believed she had met a man who truly saw her heart within months. Their friendship became a relationship. Romans was genuinely happy for them.
She celebrated their love, never imagining that one day, the man she had politely turned down would become the greatest test of her life. After graduation, Jay proposed, and Sasha said yes. Standing beside her best friend on her wedding day, Roman smiled with tears of joy. Life looked perfect. But appearances can be generous. Our elders say, not every calm river is shallow. Some storms begin in complete silence, Soon after graduation, the three stepped into the world they had dreamed about for years. Romans and Jay were employed by one of the city's most respected interior design companies, while Sasha accepted an opportunity at another firm across town. At first, life seemed kind. The three still met whenever they could, laughing over old university memories and reminding each other that one day, they would build a company of their own. Dreams are easy to make when life is simple. Keeping them is where the real test begins. Working alongside Romans every day gave Jay a front row seat to her brilliance. She wasn't loud, she wasn't competitive, she simply let her work speak for itself. And somehow, it spoke louder than everyone else's. Clients requested her by name. Senior designers trusted her ideas. Doors kept opening. The strange thing about jealousy is this. It doesn't begin by hating another person. It begins by comparing. And comparison, if left unchecked, quietly becomes resentment. Little by little, projects assigned to Romans became harder than they should have been. Important documents disappeared. Meetings were mysteriously changed. Mistakes she never made somehow carried her name. Romans blamed herself. She worked longer hours, checked every drawing twice, arrived earlier than everyone else, never once imagining that someone smiling across the office was quietly placing stones in her path. Meanwhile, every evening, Sasha returned home eager to share stories about her day. But no matter how hard she worked, Jay always found something to criticize. At first, it sounded like advice. Then it became correction. Before long, nothing she did ever seemed good enough. His words were calm, measured, almost loving. Yet, little by little, he chipped away at Sasha's confidence. Then, with a gentle smile, he planted another thought. You've been spending a lot of time with Romans lately. Marriage is different now. We should be building our own life. It felt harmless. So harmless that Sasha never questioned it. The next time Romans called, Sasha promised they'd meet the following weekend. The weekend came, then went. Another invitation followed, another apology, another promise. Distance never asks for permission. It simply grows where people stop meeting. And without realizing it, Jay had already begun building walls between two women who had once shared everything. The saddest part about growing apart is this. It rarely happens all at once. Before long, those little moments become a silence neither person knows how to break. At first, Romans blamed marriage. She smiled whenever Sasha apologized. She's building a family, she quietly told herself. Life is simply asking more of her now. She never complained, because love, real love, never keeps score. Some people don't leave your life with an argument. They leave with postponed conversations and forgotten promises. Romans buried herself in work, hoping time would eventually bring her friend back. But the challenges at work only grew heavier. Projects became harder. Mistakes she never made somehow found their way to her desk. Instead of questioning others, she simply worked harder. Honest hearts often blame themselves first. Across town, Sasha was fighting battles of her own. Jay's words slowly stole the confidence he once admired in her. A little criticism today, another tomorrow, until she began doubting the very talent that had once made her dream without fear. One Saturday afternoon, Romans picked up her phone. Let's have lunch. This time, Sasha said yes. For the first time in months, the two friends sat across from each other, laughing over a simple meal. For a little while, life felt familiar again. They spoke about university, remembered the old acacia tree where they had drawn their first house designs, and laughed about the childish arguments they used to have over whose mansion would be bigger. Some memories never grow old. They simply wait for the right people to remember them. As lunch drew to an end, Romans became unusually quiet. A smile slowly spread across her face. I've been thinking about something. Sasha looked up. Romans leaned forward. Do you remember the promise we made as little girls? Sasha didn't even have to think. To start our own interior design company. Romans nodded. I think we're ready. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The dream they had carried since childhood suddenly no longer felt impossible. They talked for hours about the kind of company they wanted to build, the lives they hoped to change, the homes they dreamed of designing, and the legacy they wanted to leave behind. With every idea, Sasha felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The kind of hope that reminds you who you were before life became complicated. As they hugged goodbye, they promised to meet again soon and begin planning their future. Romans drove home smiling. Sasha did too. She couldn't wait to tell Jay. After all, what could be more beautiful than watching two childhood friends finally build the dream they had protected for so many years? Sometimes, the greatest test of a dream is not whether it can be built, it's whether it can survive the opinions of those closest to you. That evening, Sasha shared everything with Jay. Every idea, every plan, every dream. She expected him to smile. Instead, he became very quiet. Sometimes, silence is not agreement. Sometimes, it is the sound of someone deciding which words will change everything. Jay remained quiet for a moment. Then, slowly, his expression changed. He smiled, not because he was excited about Roman's and Sasha's dream, but because he had just seen an opportunity. He began asking Sasha questions. Who would own the company? Who would make the decisions? What if Romans changed her mind? What if the friendship didn't survive working together? He never told Sasha to abandon her dream. That would have been too obvious. Instead, he simply made her question it. Manipulation rarely arrives wearing a warning sign. Sometimes, it comes dressed as concern. By the end of the conversation, Sasha was no longer talking about building a company with Romans. She was defending the idea of building one with Jay. He reminded her that they were married now. They needed something of their own, something they could build together. And Sasha wanted to believe him. After all, wasn't marriage supposed to mean building a future together? So she agreed. The next morning, Sasha called Romans. She didn't know how to explain it. She didn't know that one phone call could change a friendship that had survived childhood, university, and years of growing together. Romans listened quietly. She tried to smile through the disappointment. She congratulated Sasha. She wished her well. But when the call ended, she sat alone for a long time. Sometimes betrayal doesn't arrive as an enemy. Sometimes it comes through a voice you've known since childhood. And that was the first time Romans understood something she had never wanted to believe. Not every dream survives the people who dream it. Sasha accepted Jay's proposal, and for a while, everything looked perfect. Together, they built Hive Interiors. Jay handled the business side, while Sasha poured her creativity into the designs. The company grew quickly. Projects came, clients followed. And from the outside, they looked like a couple who had finally built the life they dreamed of. But success can reveal a person's character just as quickly as failure. Jay slowly began making decisions without Sasha. At first, they were small. Then they became important. Before long, Sasha realized that her name was on the company, but her voice was slowly disappearing from it. Whenever she questioned him, Jay always had an explanation. He was protecting the business. He was thinking about their future. He was simply making the difficult decisions, and because she loved him, she believed him. Meanwhile, Romans refused to let disappointment become the end of her story. After everything she'd experienced at her former workplace, she knew one thing. She would never allow anyone to have that much power over her work again. So she built differently. She surrounded her new company with trusted lawyers, technology specialists, and people whose job was to protect every project, every document, and every important decision. Then she gave the company a name that carried something personal: Roman Empire Interiors. And slowly, it became more than a company. It became an empire. Romans worked. She rebuilt. She protected what she had created. And despite the obstacles, her reputation continued to grow. There were competitors, of course. Business was never meant to be a peaceful garden. But among all of them, one name would eventually become impossible to ignore: Hive Interiors. Two companies, two ambitious leaders. Months went by, yet Roman still didn't know who had been working against her in her previous job. Until one day, she made a decision that changed everything. She hired someone she knew from her former workplace, someone who had seen the things happening behind closed doors. And slowly, the truth began to surface. The missing information, the altered projects, the strange decisions, the quiet sabotage, it all led back to one person: Jay. Romans finally understood. The man who had once smiled politely whenever their paths crossed had been working against her for years. But now, she was no longer the woman he had tried to undermine. She had built something he could not easily destroy. And sometimes, the greatest revenge is not destruction. It is becoming too strong to be destroyed. Meanwhile, the walls inside Hive Interiors were beginning to crack. Jay's decisions became reckless. Money disappeared. Projects failed. Clients began walking away. And Sasha was finally seeing the man she had spent years defending. Then came the truth that broke whatever was left of their marriage. Jay had been unfaithful. Not once. Not with one woman, but with several. The same man who had spent years telling Sasha she wasn't good enough had been giving pieces of himself to other women. There are men who don't know how to build beside a woman, so they spend their energy trying to make her smaller. Sasha finally stopped making excuses for him. The marriage ended. And when the battle for the children came, Sasha fought with everything she had. She won custody. Hive Interiors eventually collapsed under the weight of Jay's decisions, and Sasha was left to rebuild a life she had once believed was already complete. But there was one person she couldn't stop thinking about: Romans. The friend she had lost long before she realized she was losing her. So Sasha went to see her. There were no easy words waiting for them, only years of hurt. They talked for hours. They cried. They remembered the girlhood they had once shared and confronted the betrayal that had destroyed it. Romans eventually forgave her, but forgiveness did not bring the friendship back. Some wounds close without becoming scars you want to touch again. Romans offered Sasha a position at Roman Empire Interiors. Not beside her, not close enough to reopen the past, but far enough for Sasha to build herself again. They would pass each other in the corridors. A smile, a quiet hello, and sometimes nothing more. The friendship had died long before the forgiveness came. And perhaps that was the hardest lesson of all. Not every relationship ends with hatred. Some simply become memories. Life, however, still had another chapter waiting for Romans. She eventually met a man who understood that loving a strong woman meant standing beside her, not competing with her. A successful tycoon in construction and real estate. Romans met him at a time when she wasn't looking for love. What began as simple conversations slowly became something deeper. He admired her ambition. She admired his calmness. And unlike the love she had known before, this one never asked her to become smaller. Their relationship grew quietly, through dinners, long conversations, stolen kisses, and peaceful evenings together at home. Eventually, he asked her to marry him. And on their wedding day, Romans walked down the aisle with a smile that carried everything she had survived. She had lost a friendship, she had rebuilt her empire, and now she was choosing love again. Marriage brought a different kind of happiness. Quiet mornings together, laughter in their home, his arms around her after a long day, and the little moments that reminded her that love could actually feel like peace. Then came the news that changed their little family forever. They were expecting a baby. Months later, they welcomed a beautiful baby boy. And beside the man she loved, Romans held her son and realized that sometimes life doesn't return what it takes from you. It gives you something you never knew you needed. Sometimes what breaks your heart is simply making room for what will rebuild it. And Sasha? She kept rebuilding too. Not the life she once imagined, but a life that belonged entirely to her. Because in the end, two women who had once dreamed beneath the same tree found themselves walking two very different roads. One built an empire, the other rebuilt a life. And both learned that sometimes the people who help you begin the story are not always the people who belong in the ending. Later, they went back to the old tree together with their families, remembering where it all began and forever cherishing it. And that is the story of two best friends, one betrayal, a story you won't forget.